Far more than we think. Making Sense of Spirituality by Angelo. Chapter 21. All you need is love. Love marks the top end of the spiritual spectrum. We start with acceptance and end up with love. I've used the word love sparingly in the preceding chapters because I worry that the word itself will cause some resistance to spirituality, because the idea of love being the answer to all of our problems is somehow trite and a bit of a tired concept that has clearly not worked in the past. The title of this chapter refers of course to a famous song written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. The Beatles were obviously a phenomenal success, and their influence was widespread. They explored spirituality in a very public way, and much of their songwriting was inspired by what they found. The hippie culture of the 60s embraced spirituality, together with peace and love, but it also involved psychedelic drugs and what seemed like a rather hedonistic approach to life. Somehow, in my mind, the spiritual concept of love got tangled up with the free love movement and became a bit tarnished. There's much wisdom in the music of the time, but the ideas got lost in the midst of those images of flower-toting, long-haired, drug-taking, crazy people who seemed totally out of touch with reality. The Beatles had incredible reach with their songs, but their messages did not find sustainable traction in popular culture. My view is that history will eventually show that those guys were absolutely on the right track, and that meaningful words got lost in all the hype. Nearly 50 years have passed since then, and their voices are heard less and less often. So it is with some trepidation that I tackle the subject of love in the context of spirituality. It would have been easier to skirt around it or find a different word, but sooner or later we need to come to grips with it, because like it or not, this is the word that seems to penetrate right to the core of life. One problem is that love is a commonly used word and can mean very different things depending on the context. A few common examples are worth exploring to highlight the potential for misunderstanding. When a person looks into the eyes of his lover and says, "I love you," we're talking about romantic, intimate, passionate love, the kind of which has spawned infinite amounts of joy and suffering alike, and has inspired artists of all types throughout the ages. When a person says, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you," we know passions have subsided, and there is affection and fondness, but not love as we once knew it. When a mother holds her baby and says, "I love you," we witness probably the strongest bond of love that can exist between two human beings. Here we're talking about protection, feeding, nursing, teaching, and the sort of unconditional love that can summon superhuman strength if needed. There's perhaps no greater human love than that which a mother has for her child. When a child displays love for a parent or sibling, we know this is a different kind of love again. Family love, which involves mutual caring and support, can be beneficial, but can often be the source of much pain and suffering, either in its withholding or in its manifestation as jealousy, control, or interference. When a man says he loves playing golf, we know he enjoys his hobby. If he says he really loves golf, we infer that he not only likes golf, but he's probably passionate about it. If we say we love nature, we may mean that we like nature in the same way that we like chocolate, or, more likely, we will be expressing a deeper feeling of connection and appreciation. And we know, for example, that human beings are capable of extraordinary love of animals, particularly pets. And receiving love is just as confusing as giving it. The love that we receive from lovers, friends, parents, sibling, children, community members, and so on, will all be different and experienced differently. And so it goes on. Everyday use of the word love dilutes the potential power and meaning of phrases that promote love as the solution to our problems. These words of wisdom become hackneyed phrases, and we ignore them, or worse still, we treat them with cynicism or contempt. There's little enough evidence of love in the world, despite the fact that people have been banging on about it for thousands of years. Love is all you need. Yeah, right. Give me a break. Well, having set the scene as to why this is such a difficult subject, I now want to build towards the conclusion that a loving life is not only a much more enjoyable way to live, but is precisely why we are here. But before we do that, we need to be clear about what the word love means in spiritual terms. I'm not going to attempt a definition here because I'm bound to get it wrong. Let me instead set out what I understand love to be. We've already covered some of the components in our explorations of acceptance, gratitude, humility, non-judgment, forgiveness, and compassion. But there's more to add. I would include tolerance, patience, kindness, affection, caring, support, and generosity. I would add on top of this an all-encompassing principle that spiritual love should be unconditional. It should not demand anything in return and should ideally be given freely, without any expectation of return or attachment to the outcome. When we consider love in these terms, it does seem to make sense that such universal behaviour would make the world a much safer and more nurturing environment. The trouble is, human beings often don't act in this way at all. We act from the basic instinct of fear, and this causes behaviour that is selfish rather than selfless. As Einstein said, a delusion of separation creates for us a prison, and we restrict our love and affection to a few persons close to us. We believe in separation and scarcity and seek love externally and hold on to it as if it were in short supply. We seem to guard it closely and withhold it from others based on a questionable judgment system that uses imagined truths inherited from childhood. We will even withhold love from those closest to us if we feel justified in doing so. We think we are controlling others by withholding love, but all we're doing is hurting ourselves, because loving others is ultimately an act of self-love. Talking of self-love, one of the most damagingly negative things we can do is withhold love from ourselves. For reasons too numerous and complex to discuss here, we feel self-love is undeserved and inappropriate. We want other people to love us, but we often don't love ourselves. Some of us don't even like ourselves most of the time. This makes us needy for love from external sources and leads to a whole range of negative behaviours and lifestyles. To make things worse, we view people who do exercise self-love with suspicion and judgment, concluding that they are either weird or deranged in some way. It's almost as if we've been conditioned not to love ourselves. It seems rather blindingly obvious to say this, but how on earth are we ever going to be truly happy if we don't love ourselves? External sources of love will always let us down sooner or later, and we will be left wanting. If we do this, we're playing a game of life that we can never win, making it inevitable that we will lose. And even if we do win the emotional equivalent of the lottery, something else will eventually go wrong to rob us of the peace and contentment we covet. Well, charity begins at home. A key step on the spiritual path to inner peace and happiness is self-love. It's only when we love ourselves that we can truly make our love available to others. It's not so much the job of others to love us, but our job to love ourselves. Self-criticism and self-abuse are insane behaviours, yet many of us do just that. It's a vicious circle that stops us from loving ourselves and living life to the full. Our biggest illusion is that we are not worthy of love. We should instead treat ourselves as we would a friend. We should be honest, accepting, forgiving, compassionate, tolerant, patient, kind, supportive, and generous with ourselves. We should suspend judgment, accept ourselves as perfectly imperfect, and choose love. A baby does not have to justify its right to be loved, and neither do we. We build up our self-esteem through positive actions and acts of love, remembering that self-esteem does not come from external self-image or from productivity. Building self-worth is an individual process, and nobody else can do it for us or give it to us. Remember, we're talking about self-love from the spirit and not from the ego. Being humble, we ask our spirit to forgive us for the past, and we take steps to wipe the slate clean and start again with an agenda of unconditional self-love. Amazing results can quickly be achieved once we become willing to embark upon this path. As well as loving ourselves, we can begin to act with love towards others. This is simply a matter of intention and does not require any action or response from others. It's entirely within our control, and there's nothing to stop us other than our own thinking. We have the ability to choose love in every situation. Whatever is happening around us, we have the choice to demonstrate serenity, honesty, acceptance, forgiveness, compassion, patience, kindness, care, support, and generosity. We all have unlimited supplies of these attributes, and there's no end to the amount that we can give away. Even if our first inclination is to think negative thoughts, we can always change our minds and choose love instead. If we have already spoken harshly or behaved badly, we can still apologize and choose love. The chances are that we may have misjudged a situation due to imagined truths anyway. And even if we are supposedly justified in our thinking, we can still choose to do the loving thing. Everyone we meet has pure spirit buried within, even if they have yet to acknowledge it themselves. It's amazing how much inner peace comes from surrendering our right to judge and withhold love. Our egos will find this a humbling experience to begin with, but our spirits will be nourished by it. Our spirits will soar. Love is the language that every living creature understands, and it will be noticed. Maybe not straight away, but sooner or later we will benefit from acting with love, because we will feel good about ourselves, which in turn will make it even easier to love ourselves. We will benefit because others will start acting with love towards us. It's an upward spiral. We will reap what we sow. We don't have to wait for circumstances to change or for someone else to make the first move. Happiness comes from the giving and receiving of love, and this is what happens. Happiness happens. We live as unconditional love, and life gets better and better. That has been my experience. and it's available to everyone. We have everything we need to make a start. So to sum up about love, spiritual love includes honesty, acceptance, forgiveness, compassion, patience, kindness, care, support, and generosity. Spiritual love is unconditional. And self-love is not only encouraged, it's essential for growth. Living as love in all areas of life will quickly change our daily experience because, as we give to the world, so the world will give to us. All you need is love. 5 words that could have changed the world, but they didn't fully sink in. Maybe they will one day, but meanwhile life goes on around us. Life continues for each of us individually, but there's nothing to stop us applying the wisdom of love in our lives. It turns out that love is the very essence of spirit, and the more we experience and express love in our lives, the more spiritual we become. Love lies outside the duality of where good and bad exist in perfect balance. Love can be seen as the source of life itself, and it's the spirit that we deny ourselves by living in ego. Our egos are focused on survival and are rooted in fear, whereas spirit is pure love. Once we begin to live as love, our ego subsides and the light of spirit floods in. When we fall in love with life, life falls in love with us. We were born with all the love that we could ever need, but somehow it became overshadowed by fear. Love is an energy force within each of us that can transform our lives and the lives of those around us, if only we could get ourselves out of the way and allow love to radiate from us. Love is as important to us as sunlight is to plants, and without it we will feel starved and empty. A lack of love is the hole in the soul that so many of us try to fill by every other means possible. We will never feel complete without love, regardless of how much we possess or consume. Without love we will slowly suffocate and expire, because love is the life force of the universe. Turning away from ego-based fear and reaching for unconditional love is the act of surrendering to a higher power. Love is the power that radiates from pure spirit. Love is spirit. The trouble is that even when we see the truth in these concepts, we will still resist because our egos have such a stranglehold on our lives. As far as the ego is concerned, love represents vulnerability and weakness, whereas to the spirit, love is the ultimate source of strength. If every person, institution and nation would set aside its ego, there would be such an outbreak of love that the planet would be transformed. The biggest problem we have is that love has been buried in such an avalanche of fear that it rarely gets the chance to shine. Our denial of love creates most of our problems, personal and global, and solutions to these numerous problems cannot come from ego, but from love. Our pain and suffering results from a lack of love, and love is the only sustainable form of pain relief. Anything else is a temporary fix and will eventually stop working. And the irony is that fear keeps our love buried within, yet it's also fear that prevents us from reaching for love as the solution. It's like holding on to a tree branch for dear life, fearing a painful fall, without ever realizing that we're only a few millimeters from the safe and solid ground beneath us. All we have to do is let go, yet our minds tell us to ignore all well-intentioned advice and hold on tight, however painful it gets. Just as darkness exists in the absence of light, so fear will persist without the presence of love. The good news is that we can choose to override our minds and have faith that all will be well when we give love a chance. If we want to grow and thrive, we need to push through fear and choose love. I know I'm in danger of overdoing the repetition here, but the truth is we do have a choice. We all have complete free will as to whether we live our lives based on ego or on spirit. We can choose whether to embrace a loving life, and even if we get it wrong and revert to ego once more, we can always choose love again, over and over, until gradually it becomes the norm. We can make this decision every morning and each time during the day when we become challenged by life. What's interesting here is that when we choose love, our experience of life seems to be peaceful. But as soon as ego sneaks back in and our willpower resumes, love is sidelined and our pain returns. This pain may initially be in the form of irritation or frustration, but it will quickly grow into resentment and anger unless we once again think and act with love. This is what happens time and time again, and life seems to have a way of continuing to hurt us until we finally see the alternative. If anybody tries to force change on us, he or she is met with fierce resistance. And if we're left to our own devices, we're unlikely to embrace change unless things get pretty desperate. The middle ground is where most of us are, and change is not a priority. Living a loving life opens us up to wisdom, and the wisdom of many millennia is that love is the universal solution we all seek. The trouble is our egos don't want to see this truth. This catch-22, combined with the modern cultural resistance that I described earlier, keeps us trapped in ego-based fear with a generally uncomfortable feeling that something is missing. The solution is spiritual love. A loving attitude creates peace and joy, but these treasures will evaporate if we take them for granted and drift back into our old ways. We need to make a decision to choose love as a lifestyle and then continually make that decision over and over again whenever challenging circumstances arise. Living as love is what walking the spiritual path is really all about. Spiritual love is the one true reality of life that we can place our faith in. Spiritual love is the source of all other forms of love that I described earlier. These examples of love give us glimpses into what really is universally available to us. We can think back to those moments in life when we really felt overwhelming love, that feeling of bliss that captivated us and made us feel truly alive. Well, this is what spiritual love feels like. Unconditional spiritual love is the elixir of life, and the supply is infinite. Not only is the supply infinite, but the source resides within us. We don't need to go out there and get it elsewhere. You are love. We are love. All of us have infinite love within us that's capable of transforming our lives. Living as love attracts love into every aspect of our lives and creates heaven on earth. The alternative approach of living in fear-based ego creates hell on earth. Fear and love are basic instincts, and the way to allow love to conquer fear is to access the spirit within. The instinct of fear prevails unless we choose otherwise. We will always feel that our lives are lacking something until we grasp the power of spiritual love. The only thing lacking is our awareness and acceptance of spirituality. The only thing missing is that which we are not giving. We are constantly looking to receive love, but the key to a fulfilling life is to give love unconditionally. We become complete when we give that which we are. The selfish become the selfless through the giving of love. Miracles begin to occur when we live from love. If a miracle is thought of as a change from fear to love, then in this context, miracles happen around us all the time. Normal physical laws seem to be overcome and amazing things happen, often without any apparent effort on our part other than living a loving life. Love has the capability to solve any problem and heal any wound, provided it's given genuinely and received faithfully. Love heals, and total love heals totally. Love is the healing force of the universe, and the more that we can access it from within, the more we can release others and ourselves from pain. And this is the essence of spirituality. Spiritual love is powerfully transforming, deeply desirable, and freely available from within. Yet many of us have little idea that we have it, let alone how to go about accessing it. Love requires a change in our thinking and a new approach to life that's generally not considered normal or mainstream. This distrust of love makes sense when we consider that the world is based on fearful beliefs and ego-driven competition. Love is within us, but nothing will happen unless we allow it to flourish. There's nothing to wait for, and no perfect future time when love will suddenly burst forth and change everything. Our perception of love may be all sweetness and light, but in reality it takes commitment, practice, and priority to bring it forth and maintain our access to it. Our spiritual path is initially to learn how to love, and then to continue to love with ever-increasing perfection. We will never achieve perfection, of course, but this is the direction spiritual growth inevitably takes us in. This is our purpose. In the exchange of love, it's not so much the receiver who benefits the most, but the giver. Giving love is a joyous experience that's available to all of us. As well as being the source of love, we should therefore allow others to give love to us, so that they too may experience the joy of giving. It's an act of love to allow ourselves to be loved by another. When we hide from love, we prevent life from expressing itself. This is definitely not our purpose. Life is about giving and receiving love. All we need is love. Love is all we need. We already have everything we need to change our lives for the better. But once again, it's our choice. We can choose this for ourselves, and all we have to do is make a start. Our opportunity is to live our lives as unconditional love. Love is life.